Well, welcome to my Messy Grief podcast. We are excited to have episode 3 today. And while I love all my guests, I have someone who is extra special today. We have an interior designer with us. Her name is Haley Wright, and she happens to be my daughter. And so, what a delight. Thank you, Haley, for joining us. And
Absolutely.
yeah, well, just real quick to introduce her, she studied interior design at Auburn, and she's been working for the past 2 years in a commercial design firm in Montgomery, Alabama. And her hobbies, her grandma keeps her in supply of People magazine so she can do the crossword puzzles. She also loves cooking and then recreating those dishes at home. And then I'm going to add a little that she is a stunning ballroom dancer and has been doing that for many years. So her passion is for creating functionality at home and in life. And so I've lived this with you, and I appreciate that about you. So welcome. Thank you for being here. So just share a little bit about how you became interested in interior design.
Sure. So if I pan back and forth, I've got some notes here that I'm going to look at as well. But I've always, like I said, I have a passion for function. I like to make things streamlined. If they can be easier or better, then that's the way I want to do it. And so growing up playing house and playing house outside where there's not really as much resources to play outside, I would draw chalk floor plans that were to life size to play house in, and then the rain would come and you'd get a new house. So that started my love of it, and then carried into when I started thinking about college and what I could do. That really sparked it. So
yeah, definitely a fond memory. You've been drawing floor plans since you were in kindergarten.
yes.
And then I remember the chalk houses, and all the kids in the neighborhood wanted you to design their apartment or their house, and you would take orders and design for them. And quite a fun memory. But yes, I think it did fuel in you some creativity
For sure.
and some functionality too.
Yes.
So what do you love most about designing spaces?
So my favorite thing about designing spaces is when you can get all the functionality of it and make this space really work, because the most annoying thing is when you're living in your space and you can tell it wasn't well designed and you're just trying to survive. Maybe your kitchen's not laid out well or whatever, but then also making it personal to you. I think people's houses and their offices and the spaces that they are, even your car, they say something about you. The clothes that you wear say something about you. And so I think it's fun to go to people's houses and kind of find out about them. So I like to be able to put my design in spaces as well.
I love that. I remember when we first moved into this house, you were about 11. And the first thing you did when you walked in was like, because it was an existing house, and you're like, oh, they should have, you started redesigning and saying what they should have done.
Yep.
And we should have taken your ideas, but they weren't really cost effective at the time. So
well,
we made do.
They worked out.
It worked out. So can you share a little bit about the psychology of color and how that plays out in our home, or how that could be helpful in our homes?
Sure. So color is kind of an interesting thing. I think we hear a lot about how there's a psychology to color and how, certain things are calming and certain things are not. And there is some truth to that. It's most certainly, the first thing they teach you in school, you probably don't need to paint a bedroom red because you'll never sleep. It amps you up. And you kind of get a sense about that. You can also, if you're in a room that's all gray all the time, you might be calm, but you might be depressed and calm. If you're in a room that's blue, that might draw from the water and be peaceful. Green might draw you towards outdoors and be calming. But it also can be a super personal experience. Some people, like if they love the color yellow, maybe yellow is super calming for them, where others that makes them excited. So it can be somewhat, personal. But I wanted to add though, with your talking about the psychology of colors, there's some research to suggest too the importance of the psychology of light and the exposure to light throughout the day, helping your circadian rhythm. We don't put enough stock in how much that keeps us in check, not having all the blue light, but making sure we're having the red light and the orange light too at the right times of day.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that so much. I've always loved to be in a house where there's lots of natural light. and I'm kind of like the dog. I gravitate to the sunny spots.
Yep.
So maybe there's something to that as well.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Great reminder. Okay. So then how can our homes really help us with working through our grief? And I know grief is very individual to people. We talk about the stages of grief, but grief we know is a process. It's ongoing. It's something to process and feel, not just to fix. But how might we use the space in our home to truly be a helpful space in processing our grief?
Sure. I do want to add a disclaimer that this is not my area of study. I have gone and researched this when you asked me about joining the podcast. I was excited and was able to read some medical journals on all this type of psychology and how things work. But this is also meant to be a buffet. So if something sounds really horrible, this is not meant to put a square in a round hole. If something sounds really horrible to you, don't do that. Do something else that sounds better, or vice versa. So I just wanted to start with that. But our homes, I think, can kind of go both ways. So your home, you want it to be your oasis. You kind of want to go in and hide sometimes, particularly if you're not feeling well. Maybe you don't want to be out and with everybody and just amongst all the people and having to look your best. You feel like your home is your fortress. You can go, it takes you as you are. But in the same sense, there is some research to suggest that if we do that too much in our home, where our home just kind of becomes where we're rotting and we've got stuff everywhere, and maybe the tissues are piled up on the floor from you crying in the bed and you haven't changed the sheets, those things are going to be negative towards dealing with grief, because it's only going to make you feel worse in those things. So finding a space in your home that can be your space that you love is excellent. And that can be small. It doesn't have to be a whole, like, we're going to spring clean the whole house and throw everything out. But starting small and making a little space that's yours that feels comfortable in the home.
Great. Any thoughts on plants? I know you
Yes.
have quite a few plants. What are your thoughts on that?
I love plants. I like them just for the air quality. They do add a good bit to the air quality. But I do believe that there's a symbiotic relationship between us and plants, that they bring us a lot of joy to have living things in the house. In the same way it brings us joy to have dogs or cats, other living things in the house, other people in the house. But plants can be a powerful tool to have inside, because it's like being outside, but not. You get your temperature control, and you don't have to deal with rain or shine or whatever, but it really does mirror, they mirror your health. So if you're breathing your oxygen and singing to your plants and all the things, that's going to make you feel better. That's going to make the plant feel better. And then it's going to give you more oxygen and feel good. So.
I remember in those early stages of grief, when I was even just trying to pull myself out and be present for you guys when y'all were little, I was trying to be grateful for something. And it started with, Lord, I'm thankful for these flowers. And so it's interesting to me that it started with the plants that I saw. Now that could have been for me because I'm so drawn to color. But there is something life-giving about plants that brighten a space and make it feel softer and a little more comfortable.
And I think that's one of those things too, like that's a read the room moment, because if you've got somebody who is in the throes of just grief and depression, maybe bringing them something that they have to seriously care for is not in their best interest, and that thing's going to die and make them feel worse. So if you do that, maybe be the friend that says, hey, you're on my way home. I'm going to stop by every Tuesday night and water your plants for you. And I'm going to do a practical thing to keep this. And that does, even if you don't gift them a plant. But again, people are going to bring you meals. People are going to bring you flowers. Be the person that says, I'm going to come cut all the flowers and arrange them in the vase. Be the person that says, hey, I know you got meals covered, but I'm going to come do your dishes. So all of those kinds of things can help for sure.
I love that. Someone actually gifted us a tree, and they came and planted it for us.
Yeah.
And it had it's one of my favorite trees ever now, that whole variety. And of course the name escapes me. It's got a
heart leaf one.
It's got a heart-shaped leaf. Yeah. It's got little purple blooms first in the spring, and then these bright chartreuse kind of heart-shaped leaves, and then they turn more of a burgundy, and the name will come to me before the end of this. But to your point, like, they came and planted it, so they didn't create more work for me. And they were actually, it was an invitation for me to come outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so like maybe it's taking someone to botanical gardens to
For
get
sure.
outside if they're feeling stuck in their space. But yes, great point. Like, don't create extra work, especially in those early days, weeks, months, when we might not have the energy to water the flowers. And like you said, having wilted flowers is not all that encouraging.
Right.
Right. So bringing them weekly or something like that. I love that. Great. All right. So, any thoughts on like pictures or memorial type things, memorabilia, and how to, we don't necessarily want to have a shrine to our child, but like how all throughout our house could potentially be memories of our child. And so what might be a way to address that?
So I did some surveying too of some folks who have lost family members or friends or people that they want to remember, and researched a little bit what you can do, found some cool Etsy stuff that you can get. But what I kind of came away with is make an art piece, not a museum. So find a way to incorporate them throughout the space, but it doesn't have to be, it's going to be different, you know? And so maybe it's a shadow box of different, you know, if it's an older child, maybe it's something like their soccer trophy with their jersey and fun things like that. Maybe it's your favorite pictures. Maybe you've got, like, I know I've done this for a couple family members, has done planters with the photos on the side so that they can be a centerpiece, but it feels like a family, like it feels like a piece of the home rather than just display pictures. Of course, I love to display pictures everywhere. I've got pictures as much as I can, but I just, again, if you can find ways to create something out of another item, that's excellent. You can get t-shirt blankets made. You can get for newborn children or even slightly older babies, you can have any of their onesies made into a weighted stuffed animal that's their birth weight. So that's something sweet. But again, just using those items can help.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen people do quilts. You mentioned the t-shirt quilts that can be made out of their clothing. I've seen people make pillows out of one of their shirts, and it's just another comfort item that then can be incorporated into your environment.
Yeah, I've
Love
even
that.
seen where you'd have to have an experienced seamstress for this, but I've seen where, you know, quilted coats have kind of come into style, and people make their own quilted coats out of their kids' baby clothes or something, something that you can wear or anything like that. So
right, I like the idea of a blanket because you can, it can be in the background, but when you're wanting that closeness, you can grab it, put it on, you know, whatever, while you're reading a book. It's kind of similar to a prayer shawl, just a remembrance.
Sure.
But doesn't have to be front and center all of the time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about knowing how to address your child's room. Our situation was a little bit different. We had prepared a room for Ashlyn, but because she only lived for 2.5 days, we never actually brought her home to her room. So perhaps it was a little bit easier to deal with her room because she actually hadn't been there, but there was a longing and a loss from that as well that I had to deal with. I ended up turning her room into an office. And as I was reflecting on this earlier today, just thinking about what we had done and trying to put myself back in that space, it's been almost 19 years ago. That's where I wrote about her life. Yeah. I sat in there and was writing about her. We did eventually repaint it, so it wasn't baby girl colors, but yeah, I remember the space being comforting. We added plants to it, and there's just beauty in knowing that I was writing about her life in what would have been her room.
For sure.
So, but what are some other things that people can do? You know, the timing can differ from some folks. Some people struggle with moving homes after they've lost a child. Can you address any of those things? How to deal with the room and their belongings?
Yeah. So obviously people are going to have mixed reactions to this. Some people are going to have the reaction of, I want to close that door and I never want to touch that stuff again. And other
Right.
people might find comfort in going to it and may even find comfort in keeping it exactly the same. That's not always the most practical option. I think there's a lot of things you can do with it. So again, this is going to be on a personal basis. If you're somebody who you just love knowing that your stuff is getting used, because it's already hard to get rid of stuff anyways. That's hard just on an average day. So you add this other layer to it. If you're somebody who struggles to get rid of stuff, maybe you find somebody who has a child about that age who you know they can use that stuff. This is a blessing to them to be able to use it. Or like you say, maybe you adapt and sort of still have this room that's decorated and you have photos and you might have a shadow box or things like that, but you use it for something else and it can be a comforting space for you that's not necessarily, like I say, a museum, exactly how everything was. But that does take time. I wouldn't push yourself to do that for any reason, just because that's going to bring up a lot of stuff.
Right. Yes. And again, the timeline is going to vary from person to person. I found, so in the house that we've lived in now for the past 13 years, obviously she wasn't a part of our life here. But I have a playlist of music that I associate with that time in my life. And so there are times that even today I will go into my office and I just need to sit with my thoughts of her, and I will turn on that music. And so I try to find a comforting space to do that. And so, like you said, that the room could be repurposed into something that's still honoring to them or becomes a comforting space for you. But especially in the early days, being able to come into it when you feel ready and able to kind of sit in those emotions.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, any other thoughts or suggestions on how a quick and easy way just to create a more peaceful space?
Yes, for sure. So I've actually had to employ this recently as we just got married, obviously. So my husband's moving into my apartment and there's chaos everywhere from boxes and such. And that is not my cup of tea. I like everything in its place. So kind of going space by space. Again, you're probably, if you're grieving, you're not in this space to where you're like, we're going to overhaul the house and have this great, clean, minimalistic home. That's fine. Don't do that. You talked about light. I tend to gravitate towards my living room in the mornings because I get morning light in there, and my bedroom in the evenings because I get evening light in there. Find a space that you like the light in, and then carve out a corner, even if it means you have to take all the junk that's sitting there and set it in another room for another day. That's another problem, but you're making a right now kind of solution. And then I like to do the 5 senses. If you can get something that tastes good, if you can get something that sounds good, if you can get something like that feels good to the touch, something that you can see that's good, and then what's your last sense is your smell. So for me, this usually is like if I've had a bad day, I know I'm going home and I'm going to make space in the living room, and I'm going to have Clint bring me a chicken fajita roll up, which tastes good, smells good. And I'm going to get in not my ugly pajamas. I'm going to get in cute pajamas that I still feel good about, but I'm very comfortable. I'm going to put on a TV show. I know I'm notorious for Dateline, but I'm going to put on something else. I'm going to put on Gilmore Girls. It's a little bit happier. And maybe I drink my drink out of a fun cup or something so that my space feels good. I might light a candle so that it smells really extra good. But whatever you can do to make something special around that. And again, if you're in the early stages of grief, and this is more to the friends of people who are grieving, because I'm guilty of this. We don't know what to do because we don't know. It feels awkward. You don't know. Be the person that says, hey, I'm going to come change your sheets because that has to be done. You know, it has to be done because you have to do it in your own house. Do things that they also need. That's going to freshen that up. Vacuum their floor because that needs to be done. You know, it needs to be done. Those little things are going to help quickly make your space feel better.
Oh, perfect. I love that. Any other ideas about using space in and around our homes to help with the grieving process?
I would say make it an oasis. And sometimes this is going to mean not having people in the home that are bothersome to you. And I know that sounds bad, but if you've got somebody who's just, some people, everybody grieves differently, and you might have a friend who thinks they know the way that you need to grieve. They think the answer is to open the curtains and get out of bed. But that's not working for you. Find the friend that's going to come get in the bed with you and make your home your space. This is your comfort zone. Make it the spot that you can go and you can cry or you can be happy or whatever, but you're in your own spot. So again, having things that you love around you. And again, just the five senses. If you can find something in the room that deals with each of the five senses, I think that very quickly, because you don't even have to go out and get anything. You can kind of make that happen with what you've already got, will adapt quickly.
Right. I love that. And I love that. Be the friend. Like if they don't want to get out of bed, climb in bed with them.
Yeah.
And that's for those listening who are grieving or in the early stages of grief, know that will change. And so we're sort of giving you permission to do what you need to do. I mean, yes, life needs to continue and you'll have daily tasks to do. But if you need to go lay down and take a nap, go lay down and take a nap, as long as you can do that. And know that, okay, tomorrow I might get up and spend a little time outside in the sunshine. So the seasons are going to change, and the weather is going to have an impact on that. If you're a cold weather person, a warm weather person, there's so many factors. So I really just want to give people permission. And I love that you've said that. This is not a one size fits all. It's a buffet. Take what works for you. And it might be exploring to find what works for you.
So and I really do have, sorry. I was going to say, you brought up being outside. So I have a twin size bed, $60 at Walmart, that is covered in a plastic sheet that I keep on my back porch, because if I'm just having a rough day and I'm like, I really don't want to go outside, and what am I going to do outside? I'm going to go lay in the bed outside. And so, and truly, I know it sounds silly, but it does make you feel better. Even on a cold day, you put your coat on, you bundle up, you take your jackets and you go outside, and having that can be something, they've done that for years, at the old sanatoriums, they'd wheel you outside to sit in the, you can, but having that option to go outdoors I agree with you there, that's the best thing you can do.
The best $25 I've spent on Amazon ever was getting a hammock. And it will take 10 minutes at lunch and just go lay in the hammock, and I get to stare up at the leaves if it's spring or summer. And there's something about that swinging motion that is soothing to me. And again, it could be as quick as 10 minutes just to take a break. So there's a lot at play when you're able to go outside. Take your shoes off, walk around barefooted if the temperature allows. But yeah, great ideas.
And you've had Jill Bond on the podcast too, haven't you?
Yeah, she was on last month.
So I always live by her put a paper umbrella in it theory. And you sent me the paper umbrellas that sometimes all you need is, you're having a bad day and you put a paper umbrella in your drink. And grief is not as simple as that. But there are opportunities for little glimmers of joy that are cheap and easy and not overwhelming to tackle, that can just elevate the mood a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So, I was just at Disney with Emma for her 21st birthday, and there were bubble wands everywhere. And I just giggled because these little girls were having a blast, and they were all being pushed in strollers like little princesses, but the bubbles were everywhere and I was getting to enjoy them. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to pay Disney price, but I came home and bought a bubble wand.
That's fun.
And I use it to wake up your brother in the morning.
Oh, goodness.
And to help the dog stop barking and all the things. So, but it brings to your point, it can be little things of joy. And in those early stages, it's really hard sometimes to find that. And again, we try to encourage people, it's okay to take a break from your grief. It's not dishonoring to your child. We are still fully human. And so we need those full range of emotions. So whatever simple things, again, go to the dollar store and get a bottle of bubbles or the scented candle, or go swing or a hammock or something. And so
I think it can be hard because if you're in that stage, a lot of the resources are saying, well, just do this, this, and this. And you're thinking, I don't even have the energy to get out of bed. How do I have the energy to go out and do all this list of things that's supposed to make me feel better? And so having those little things that feel like you can accomplish them pretty simply are good.
Right. And I'll end with this. Like as my grief journey has continued, I have found that it's not always been a present heaviness. Um, but there are times, especially getting close to Ashlyn's birthday, where I feel like, oh, I need to go sit in the space and just cry or feel all the feelings or remember all the things. And so having that space available and ready for me is nice, that I can go there, allow myself to feel all the things. And again, it's not necessarily turning on a switch or a dial on and off, but like music can take me there very quickly and easily. And so I will carve out time to do that. And then that allows me to feel that connection, to be in touch with my emotions. And then I can carry on with my day. And there's a lightness to me, because I've done something that I feel like is honoring to my deep heart emotions, as well as honoring to her. And then I can carry on. So, and carrying her with me instead of walking away.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does.
So, well, thank you. I am thrilled that you could join us today. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and congratulations on the marriage. It's
Thank you.
Not quite 3 weeks, right?
I know. We're really killing it so far.
Right. So I'm trying to get used to the new last name. It is
I know.
it is much shorter, I see, as it's printed on the screen there.
It is. It actually all fits.
It all fits.
I appreciate you for having me. That means a lot.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.